This is Malcolm341. In today's video, we're going to look at a tool I created that packs UDIM tiles. UDIM UV layout can be slow and cumbersome, and this makes it easy, so let's check it out. Okay, so if you've purchased the shelf from my store, you can come up here and click the UDIM icon, and that will launch the new tool. I'm going to select my mesh and then turn the checker map on. We've got a bunch of really handy options here. So we've got checker map on off. You can increase or decrease the size of the checkers by clicking the plus or minus buttons. You can turn on UV shaded as a toggle on and off, so you can see it here. And you can toggle UV border on off as well. On top of that, you can show and hide mesh edges by clicking this toggle. So this is really handy because in the viewport, it hides the edges, but you can still manipulate the UVs. Whoops, I need to grab one that you can actually see here. So you can do your UV mapping stuff here or UV layout stuff here, and those edges don't get in the way, so you can actually see what you're doing, and you can just toggle that on and off whenever you want. Another great feature that I like is image dimming. So that's a checkbox here. You can turn that on and that will darken the image so you can actually see what you're doing. And what's really nice about this is Maya has a bug in it and their image dimming, if you turn it on here or whatever, this setting is not remembered after you restart Maya. And I almost always want to have image dimming turned on, but it will default to off every time after a Maya restart. So I'm going to close the tool and image dimming is enabled here. It's all good, whatever. I'm going to close Maya. I'm going to reopen Maya. Okay, Maya's open. I'm going to reopen my file. And you can see the image dimming has been disabled. And even though I left it on here, you can even see it's like still turned on there. It gets disabled because of their bug. Now watch this. I'm going to load my tool and boom, it's re-enabled. So by turning this on, you kind of force Maya to do what you want it to do. So I find that really helpful. So I should make it clear, this tool is not a UV mapping tool. This tool is a UV layout tool specifically to work with UDIM tiles. At this point in the project, you should have all of your UV mapping done. It doesn't matter about the scale of the shells or the rotation of the shells, but they should all be UV mapped and unfolded the way that you want for the final texture mapping. Okay, so let's start using the tool. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to click the Pack All 0 to 1 button, and that's going to take everything and put it into the 0 to 1. And because I have this checkbox turned on, Auto Spin Shells, it's going to try to spin all of these shells as it puts them in 0 to 1 for the best fit. So that's why I was saying it doesn't really matter what your rotation or your texel density is here. See, now you can see all of the texel density is nice and identical between all the different shells. And now what a lot of people would do at this point is they would select these shells that rotated a weird way and rotate those to be the direction that they want to be. And I've got some manual tools in here to do that. See, we've got move tile left, right, up, down. So you can move those exactly one tile away if you want, right, up, whatever. And then we've got spin, which will spin left or right 90 degrees. And we've got flip U and flip V. But what I really want to show you is this new tool that I've added in, which is Orient Shells to X, Y, or Z. So I've just temporarily applied a arrow texture map to it so we can see the direction that the UV shells are all facing. And we would probably want to fix this up because it's facing kind of diagonal. And that's the problem with auto spin shells like Maya's layout UVs and rotate at the same time. It might try to give you a 90-degree angle, but it's always going to be wrong to some degree, and you're going to want to do some cleanup. You can see here, this part of the model got up, which is what I want, but this part is like going to the right, and then this part is like diagonal or whatever. And in the past, what I would do is I'd use the Orient tool, and I would go in and I would find out, what edge that is. And then from there, you would need to kind of tediously find out which one to rotate that to, and then click it. And then see, I clicked it and it made it square here, but it's still facing the wrong way. And I find that really time consuming and it wastes your whole day going in and manually orienting all the shells. And that's why we have these new tools here, which are super useful. So what's really cool about these tools is you just go into UV shell mode, select the shell that you want to edit, and then you just say go up, so Y. And boom, it goes in one click. And then if you click it again, it's a toggle. And so it'll go negative Y. So if it goes the wrong way, you just click again and it goes again. So watch this. I'm in shell mode. So I'll select the shell in the 3D viewport. and go boom. In one click, it goes down, and 2 click, it goes up. So I don't have to spend any time thinking about it. And then these ones are both rotated the same way. It will work on multiple selection as well. So I'll select both the shells and I'll click once, goes down, click up, it's done. So very fast. You could actually select all of the shells. It will take like a little bit longer. So I would go through the model now and fix all these up. And then they don't have to go Y up. If you want it to go positive X or whatever, you click X, it goes that way. So let's select this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and then just go click, goes through. No, wrong way. Click one more time, it goes through, boom, you're done. I find that tool to be super useful, and I'm actually going to roll this back into the other UV mapping tool that I created. Great, so I've got the whole model mapped and it's all facing the right direction. It's all facing Y up effectively. So at this point, I've made a mess of the UVs because I've gone and done some more work and done all the flipping or whatever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the checker map back on so you can see what we're doing. And then I'm going to turn on shaded because I like that. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off auto spin because I really only need that for the first time unless you want to auto spin every time you do this. And then I'm going to do another pack 0 to 1. That's going to put everything into 0 to 1 and it's going to flip it back the way that I wanted, but it's also going to leave everything facing the way that I just did that work. Because I turned off auto spin, it's just going to put everything back into 0 to 1. And so now I have the basis to actually start my UDIM layout. So from here, I'm actually going to turn on tile lines so we can see the UDIM tiles. I'm going to turn on tile labels. These are all toggles, which is super handy. And then I'm going to turn on percent used. And what I really like about this percent used is if you go to view, heads up display, UV statistics, you'll see that I already have percentage used turned on, but it's not displaying here. And that is because, I'm pretty sure this is a bug, but this doesn't work between restarts of Maya. So if you turn this on and it's all good, you can see the checkbox is on, but it's not displaying. You have to go in and toggle it again. And that is super annoying. So I made this tool just have a button here just to save you time. So you just click this. And also, I found it really hard to read, so I get rid of all the other junk. So if you want to see what's used, you just click it, and it says 64% used. And next, I also want to mention that Omar was helping me quite a bit develop this tool and test it. I don't really know too much about UDIM, and so he was quite helpful to explain this workflow to me because it was quite mysterious when I first started working on this tool. So we can come over here and we can, do whatever the map size and the padding. I'm going to do 32 just so it's easier to see here. And we've done our pack all once. And so the next thing that we want to do is define our texel density for every other shell that's going to be in our model. What you want to do is you want to do a couple tests. So I'm going to select, I don't know, whatever, these two, let's say, and I'm going to click pack selected get TD, which stands for pack selected get texel density. So I'm going to click that. And it's going to go through and it's going to make those 0 to 1. And it's going to scale all the other shells to match that. And it's going to move them out of the way so you can see what you're doing. So when you first start off, basically what you're trying to do is figure out what is my biggest shell that's going to fit in a single tile. And then we're going to keep that same texel density all the way through all the UDIM tiles. So you can see there's my test. I got 77%. So we could try whatever these ones. So this is just a trial and error stage. So we'll click it again. We'll wait for it to go. And these are 50%. What about these three? Let's try it. So that's 59. So that's terrible. So I think it is it this one and this one? Let's try. Click it. And that's 74. So I think these two actually was better. So let's try these ones again. Like that. Okay, and that's 77. So let's go with that. We're going to do an average texel density of 77% used. Whatever that is goes into here. Every time you click this button, it gives you the pixels per unit. So on a 4K map, it's 29.8773 pixels per unit is going to be our texel density for this prop, let's say. And one thing that I want to mention now is I actually found a trick that you can do in the code with the copy paste texel density. And if you're doing a lot of shells and you need to set texel density on a lot of shells, I was able to make my tool run much faster than the Maya default So just to show you that, I have duplicated the crate 4 times and combined it together. Let's pack it all 0 to 1 so all the shells are super tiny. And then the typical way that you would get or set texel density would be through the UV toolkit, and you would go to the Transform tab, and then you would click the Set, and you'd select all the shells, I guess, and click Set, and it would go through and see it's doing its loading here. It's taking quite a while. And it's really slow, actually. It's a great tool, but it's quite slow. And this isn't an issue for games artists, but for film artists, you're going to have hundreds or thousands of shells. And the vert count of those is probably going to be a lot higher. So you can see it's actually like pretty slow to set texel density across a number of shells. Just going to wait for this to finish. Okay, it's almost done. Okay, there, and it's all set and we've got it or whatever. Now watch how fast that is in this tool with my weird hack that I found. So I'm just gonna, can I undo that? Yeah, okay, cool. So it's undone, all right. And now I'm gonna say paste text density, which is exactly the same thing, just with my trick. So watch this. Watch how fast it's going through all the shells here. You can see each one is processing there, and it's done. So it was finished before I could even finish talking about it. So that is a significant speed improvement. So even if you just need to set shell texel density, you should definitely grab this because that is going to save you a ton of time. And the more shells you have, the more time it's going to save you. Okay, back to now setting our stuff into the tiles now that we have the texel density correct. So we'll go down to this section here. So we have the UDIM number, and you can type stuff in here. You can type up to 2,199 UDIM tiles. That's the max. You can hit the little X here to reset that. And then you can increase the UDIM tile here by 1 by clicking that, or decrease. You can go plus 10 or minus 10. And then I'll just reset that again there. So that's the basic controls for sending stuff to a tile. And what that means is we've got the texel density that we want for the rest of this stuff. So now we need to pack it into the tiles. And the way that you would do this in Maya is awful. Basically a hand process. I actually couldn't believe how terribly slow it was. So Maya has this super clunky Layout UVs options box, and you can set it up here, whatever, leave translate, turn off all the scaling stuff. And then it's got this great tool here, or I thought it was a great tool, where it says you can magically just take your selection and distribute it into the tiles. I thought you could say, I would like to put this, let's say 3 tiles high, and U tiles, up to, I don't know, let's just go 5 or something here. And then I'm going to click the button and see what happens. And look what it does. It doesn't do anything remotely useful. Not only does it leave all this useless, wasted gaps here, it breaks everything up and it is totally useless. I just want to lay it out the way Omar described it to me. They use tile 1001 to 1010, and then they loop back, and 11 to 20, and then they loop back, and they loop back, and they basically go infinite along V, but they only go 10 positive along U. And you can actually see in Maya's viewport, they don't label the UDIM tiles past those numbers. I guess because no one's using them and that's not a common workflow. But the way that this Maya default tool was designed is it requires you to type all of this stuff in manually, and it doesn't acknowledge the 1 to 10 horizontal and infinite vertical. It assumes that you would go to custom here, and then you would have to type U and positive U and negative U and positive V and negative V, and that's entering 4 numeric entry keys every time you want to do one tile of work. So it just seemed like this tool was maybe supposed to work and doesn't. And this tool, the way it's designed, is just too slow and painful to use to do this type of work. I don't like this interface, and I have something much better. So let's go back to that. So I've destroyed my pack here because I did so much messing around showing you all the bugs in the My default one or whatever, but that doesn't matter because we can just select this and this again and just run our pack selected get TD, and that'll get us back to where we started. So there we go. We've got our texel density derived from this. It's pasted onto all of these, and we're ready to start sending stuff to tiles. So let's do it. So this is really cool. We can select some shells, let's say. Let's take this stuff, for example, and we can say send to UDIM number, so 1001. So that's the first one. We can go plus and go to 2 or whatever. You can manually type it in. You can go to 4. The really cool thing is you could go plus 10 if you wanted to go to 14, if you wanted to send it up. And then you could go minus to send it over here. So this respects the 0 to 10 thing. So if we go, 1, 2, 9, let's say, with -10 just so it's easier to look at. So you can send it to any tile you want at the click of the send UDIM tiles, and then you can go +1 and it goes to 10, and then +1, it goes to 11. See, it loops back. So it goes up infinitely, but only horizontally 10. So I find this to be far superior to typing in 4 different values and then it's a total nightmare. This is like a lot faster, obviously. What else is super cool about this? Here, I'm going to send this I'm just going to reset and send it to 1002. So I've got extra space here. And now watch this. Because I have auto pack shells turned on, I'm going to grab this stuff and see if it fits. Still, it's 1002. Watch this. Send to. Boom, it adds to the pack. And also, Omar said it needs to add to the pack from the center out. So unlike Maya's where it's like, goes down here, watch this. No matter where this is, send a shell, goes to the center. Here, let's add some more stuff in. This is so cool. Select that. So you can pack your shells interactively and squeeze as much efficiency or as little efficiency as you want out of it. You can just keep adding stuff. So here, let's add too much and we'll see where the problem is. So we'll add that. And it's like, oh, okay, I've got too much stuff in there. So now what you can do is you could get rid of some stuff. Let's say we could send that over to 2003. See if it fits. Great, it fits in there. And then we'll send these ones back over to 2002. Great, they fit in there. And now what is super cool is as it's doing the auto packing, it respects the padding that you set. So if you set this padding higher, let's go 128 and then send to, what is this, 2003? It will repad them out. And I find this super valuable feature because this is actually something that's really annoying. Once you've kind of done your pack, manually placing shells, you don't know if they're the right spacing apart or not. So with this tool, you can interactively repack stuff. It's pretty cool. So we've got a bunch of wasted space here. So let's just add all this stuff and see what happens to this shell. So I'm just going to shift select it all. And that is 2001 and we'll send to. And boom. So you can kind of go through interactively and decide how you want your layouts. Because we turned off auto spin and we have auto pack turned on, it's going to dynamically try to pack it and it's not going to rotate your shells. So that means this stuff's always going to stay horizontal the way that you set it when we first started working on this. So let's send this to, I don't know, 2004, let's say. And then there's a pretty quick example, but then you could go back and optimize it because I don't even think that we need this much. This is the neat thing is we could try to skim some of this stuff off here and add it into tile 1, send it over. And see, it doesn't fit. Now, the only limitation of this tool is it cannot magically figure out if you filled the tile too full and you have overflow to put it into the next tile. And the reason that I can't do that is it would be too slow. You would be waiting minutes or hours for it to figure out the math to do the overflow or whatever. But guess what? Maya's own default tool also doesn't have this feature. As we saw, when you try to use their auto packing thing, it creates just a disgusting mess of shells split up, tiny shells using a whole tile. Whatever, it's awful. So the workflow would be to try to put everything into the tile that you want and then remove the stuff that doesn't fit. For example, let's say that's going to stay, but this stuff doesn't fit. Like, let's just do a quick thing and we'll just send this all over to tile 2 interactively. And we're like, great, it all fits. But maybe this and this, I really want these specific details to show up in this part of the tile or whatever for texturing purposes, material purposes. So you could send that to 1 and you can jiggle it around interactively. See, it doesn't fit. Oh, we added a little bit too much. So you can grab that stuff and send it back to tile 2. And then see, as we destroy our nice packing, because we have auto pack turned on, anytime we send something back to a tile, it fixes itself and it centers itself. So that can be really handy. So let's see, does this one actually fit? I can't quite tell. No, it doesn't. And because we have checker turned on, you'll see when you get overlap, you'll actually see stuff that goes out of boundary. It activates the checker map beside it. So we know that that doesn't fit. So let's see if we can stick it into here. So that's 1002. Boom, and it fits. So we've got those. So you can optimize this as much as you want or as little as you want. I don't think these will fit into 2. Let's see. Yeah, those don't fit into 2. So this one has to go to 3. And whoops. grab all that together and send to 3. So it lays out along, and then that one has to go to 4. So you get the idea. You can kind of go through and you have full interactive control over how you want to pack your stuff. So that is pretty neat. This is a pretty simple prop, unfortunately, so it doesn't have a ton of shells. So in order to show you the tool, how it would work on something more complex, I've just duplicated all of these loose parts just so we have more shells to look at and kind of go through the workflow more so I can show you these other features. Also, I should mention that it was imperative to Omar for the tool to work on separate objects in the outliner. My object is combined into a single object, but all of these tools do work in shell mode or in object mode because I guess in the film industry, it's more common to leave the objects separated in the outliner. So let's just select everything and we're going to send to 105. And you can see, actually, it all fits, which is so annoying for the tutorial, but it all fits. But we've got all this wasted space here. So we could send it over there just temporarily. And then watch this. We'll just like try to fill this up with some small stuff. So we'll do 2002, send it over. And so you can keep adding to it until it breaks. And then when it breaks, you can send to the next tile. So pretty interesting workflow, actually. I think it's really neat the way it can pack it and then kind of add to the pack. And then you can, select this next stuff and send it over to 2003. Let's do that, 2003. And you can really make good, efficient use of your UDIM tiles while keeping exactly the same Texel density that you set on the original base shell to drive what you're going to do for the rest of the work. So next I want to show you this really cool feature that is super helpful, just a really interesting organization feature called Pack Selected to Pivot. And so what this does is it takes any number of shells that are anywhere in the UV layout and it clusters them together into a pack wherever the pivot of the object is, if that makes sense. So if I've got some shells like this and I'm just like, it's like a mess. It's all over the place. These little annoying ones are over here. You can select these and see where my pivot is. If you click Pack Selected to Pivot, it clusters them to the pivot, which is great for organization, but it also uses the padding. So you can use this to re-space your cluster of shells to the correct padding instead of being like, I don't know. Is that 16? Is that close enough? Oh, I don't know. Is that like, and then wasting space or making it too tight or whatever, you can just grab it and go pack and boom, it uses that. It's like it packs it into the tile, but the tile is wherever the pivot is. And it also supports custom pivot. So if you had this and you wanted to put it here, you click it and it goes there and does the same thing. So this is really handy for organization. So you could just quickly grab these and go pack to pivot and, okay, great, I've got those, move them over here, continue to work on it or whatever. And just a super intuitive way to kind of work with the stuff instead of like selecting it each time and blah, 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 doing all that crap manually. You can now collect them together and have them nice and spaced and then, move them where they want to go. Or you could just then, send them to whatever tile. On top of that, we have the layout up and layout right, which are also super useful because you may have done some custom stuff here. Like, okay, this is like pretty good, but if I could just fit something in here and maybe I don't want to use the auto pack because it's going to spill over or whatever. This is a really cool way to visualize or just get a different shape. So if I pack selected to pivot and I get my little cluster here, we layout right, it will skinny the pack out. And you can visualize what's happening, but not only visualize what's happening, you can then be like, I could like maybe stick it in here, or maybe I could stick it in here or whatever. And again, this respects the padding, so it pads it correctly out. So pack selected to pivot resets it, and then you can also go up. So you can create a rectangular shape because all the other tools, they make like a square, and it can be quite helpful to get a rectangle if you're left over with a little hole and you feel like you can fit something in there. So for example, if we got all of these little things here, let's get like all the really small stuff. Grab this, whatever, pack to center to get a cluster. And then, maybe I've got like a little bit of space left in here. Let's lay out right and see how skinny it'll get. And so you can do interesting stuff like this, where we could say, okay, that actually fits great there, whatever. These ones don't fit, but they'll fit here. So just another way that you can fine tune some stuff. Also, if you wanted to get specific shells with each other laid out in a more sensical pattern, because if you grabbed all these circles and did a pack selected to pivot, you would get a cluster like that, but you might actually want to get more specific and do something like this, which can be helpful as well. That can save you a ton of time, right? Instead of having to, it's so funny, that last little one just blip. So imagine doing that by hand. That'd be a nightmare. You'd have to like lay them all out, space them or whatever. And again, padding is supported. So you can do that just by clicking it and then be like, oh, this is great. This is how I want to texture my model. It's more visual the way that I like to do it or whatever. So say you wanted to do those and same thing, you can lay them out horizontally, which I think is super cool. And then go like that, for example. If it fit, it doesn't fit. So you will have to do something else. So that is the basic workflow. Actually, we'll grab all of this stuff and send it to shell 105. There we go. And so that's cool. And actually, we could probably fit like a lot of it in here in 104, let's say even. Almost. Yeah, so sometimes it can be tricky to clean that stuff up. So you can always undo and then try to shave some off beforehand if you want. And then just go send to 104 and see if it fits. Yeah, great. So it fits. So, that should save a ton of time for everybody, I think. And then let's just send these to 105 so they're centered. And now if you don't want it to auto pack like that, like let's say you've done a very specific arrangement and you would like to keep that arrangement and send it to any UDIM tile. Let's say that's your arrangement. You want it to be exactly like that. But if you send to, let's go to 115, it will auto pack it back to the center. And that's desirable in most cases, but in certain cases, you're going to have a layout that you've manually crafted and you want to maintain that. That's also supported. Just turn off the auto pack shells and then send, and you won't get a pack. You'll just get a send. So you can send it to any shell that you want. Whoops, it went too far away. So that can be helpful as well for certain custom stuff that you've done. What is it, 105? Send it back there. I'm going to turn that back on. And then finally, I'm going to go through the send shells to next and world space to next. So send shells to next is pretty self-explanatory. It takes whatever shells you have. I've got AutoPack on, and it sends it to the next tile, which can be helpful as you're working along. So you just click that, and it goes to 1006, 1007, 8, 9, 10. And then the cool thing is when it gets to 10, again, it respects the 1 to 10 workflow and it actually loops back on itself. I think if you turn auto pack off, it might be faster. Let's see. Yeah, because it doesn't have to do the packing. So if it's already packed and you just need to send it over to the next tile. So see, this is actually really cool because it loops back on itself. So you don't have to think about what you're doing. And it's also based on this, right? So if you wanted to send to the next tile, you could manually type or you can minus. It's just going to auto increment this. So if it goes to 12, it's going to hit on 13. And then from there, 14, 15, 16, 17, you get the idea. So that can be helpful when you've got a bunch of shells to start off with and you just want to go send to next, auto pack and whatever, send to next, auto pack. So another way that you can lay them out where you don't have to do it all manually. You can start your clusters this way, select what you want, and then you don't have to fiddle with any settings. I found the Maya default way, like the main issue with it was the interface was so clunky and it didn't have the 0 to 10 thing. So, just even sending to the next tile, I would have had to type in 4 numeric entries and hit enter just to test my work, right? Because this is just kind of like, I'm just doing this temporarily. Then I'm going to come back and clean it up. Here, let's send all these together and see what we get. Right, so that would have been a nightmare just to get that. It would have been like 1, 2, -1, whatever. It was too confusing for me. It's not intuitive enough. Okay, and then finally, Omar said that a really useful workflow for this type of work, because there's hundreds of shells, is often the artist will organize their mesh from left to right. So they'll do like left, whatever side of the character, center, and then right side of the character, or spaceship or whatever prop. And he said it would be super helpful if we could just select all of this stuff and have the tool magically figure out what's on the left, what's in the center, and what is on the right. And so I have that working as well. It works on meshes. So you have to be in mesh select mode or object mode, and the meshes have to be separated. So it works on per mesh basis. it uses the bounding box center. So it doesn't matter what your transform is. You could have a custom pivot for a character's finger joint or something, and it will just take whatever position the bounding box center is and use that from -x to 0. Anything that lands right on 0 goes in the center, and anything +x goes in order from left to right in the UDIM tile all the way to the end, the highest value on +x. I've broken the Texel density for this object. It doesn't matter. I'm just showing you as a test. The reason I did that is so we can actually see the shells. Otherwise, they'd be so tiny it wouldn't even show up on the video. So right now, each mesh, its shells occupy the 0 to 1 space. They're all just overlapping. You wouldn't want to do this, obviously, but just for the demonstration of the tool, it'll make sense. So I'm just going to select my meshes in the 3D view, and I'm going to reset my tile to 0 to 1 because that's where I want it to start. You can actually have a custom start point, and then you just click the world space to next UDIM, and it goes through, and it's going to magically figure it out. It's going to take a minute because it's got to do all the calculations. So you can see it's going through, finding all the centers of the pivots. And then it's doing the layout, it's going through, and it's going to do the layout, and boom, there you go. I mean, you can't see it because that stuff scales in screen space. So let's turn that off. And there you have it. So we chose 0 to 1, and it went to, we chose 1001, and it went to 1120. And if you go to shell mode and you highlight the shells, we can see the little bolts are the farthest left. And then it goes to the right, and then it loops back, and it goes a little bit more, and so on. And it goes all the way, and then whatever, the center is probably around here somewhere. Here comes the left, and then the center, and then the right, and blah, 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 and then positive right. And it's hard to see these ones because they're so small, but actually the thing that's farthest to +x is tiny little bolts. So you can see that thing is pretty close to the farthest, but it's actually the bolts on the far end. So this is a cool way to do your final layout for your shells, but it's also a cool way just to get everything like spread out so you can kind of see it and then work on it from there. It will take whatever you have. It won't do one shell per tile. It'll take whatever the mesh has. I think, unfortunately, each one of these meshes only has one shell. If it had, oh, here you go. You can see this one had 2 shells, so it put it. So it grabs the mesh and it grabs all its associated shells and it puts it in the tile based on left to right. Only works along X, but that is pretty cool. And then if you wanted to do that, you didn't want to start it at 0. Maybe you wanted to start it at 1050, let's say. We can do the same thing. Just run the tool again with a different starting range and just wait for it to go through and do all the calculations. It's fun to watch because it does that funky little animation. And it's going to go through and boom. So it started at whatever. Oh, I guess that was, 150. And it ended at 1169. So that is it. Hopefully people like that. Omar said that would be a valuable tool for the film industry. So that is pretty cool. I hope everybody enjoys this tool. I think it's a big improvement over how people are doing it in Maya anyways. I'm sure there's some external apps that are much better at doing this, but inside of Maya, this is probably the best way that you could do UDIM layout and really speed your workflow up. So if that's something you need, definitely grab this tool. If you've already purchased the Mega Script Pack or the UV Mapping Pack, this will be a free update, so you just need to download the same file again from your original email link to get the new stuff. If you haven't purchased the script yet, you can grab the script by itself in the UV Mapping Pack, or you can get it in the Mega Script Pack, so take your pick. Thanks very much for watching this video. Without viewers like you, this channel would not exist. If you liked this video and enjoy the channel, please support me by purchasing something from the online store. Each purchase goes towards creating more video content and keeps the channel ad-free. See you next time. Have a radical day.